Hello and welcome to the LaLanne Pass It On podcast. My name is Greg Justice and I'm here with my co-host Elaine, LaLanne. How are you today, Elaine?
Oh, I'm always good. I feel terrific, and I'm so excited to have on a special guest today. She is a climber, and when I was a little girl, I was a climber. I climbed every tree I could find,
Yeah.
but I never continued my climbing. But I have stories, lots of climbing stories, and we want to hear all about her climbing stories.
Yes, Elaine, as you mentioned, our special guest today is Dierdre Wolownick. And at age 70, she became the oldest woman to climb El Capitan, breaking her own world record when she did it previously at age 66. And now, for those of you who don't know, El Capitan is a 3,200-foot granite wall in Yosemite National Park. Now, before I bring Dierdre into the show, I want to actually show a preview of the Climbing into Life, which is the Dierdre Wolownick story. And it is a documentary, and we're going to show a preview of that.
So how did I get here? It's a long story.
One big smile.
I took my daughter to a marathon and I watched everybody coming in the finish line. I was thinking, oh, they look so happy. I want to know what that feels like.
When I realized that the whole world was looking at this young white male, Alex, climbing this wall, and that his mother spoke 7 languages, played at least 3 instruments, was a painter artist, had lived in Japan, and was a prolific writer, I thought, why isn't society naturally looking at this remarkable human being?
I'm very pleasantly surprised by what mom has done in the second half of her life.
I decided that, okay, well, maybe this is my chance to have a life. You can learn so much from copying the masters in whatever endeavor. 3 weeks, I think, after Alex did his incredible free solo climb of El Capitan, he led me up El Cap. Climbing is 100% you against you, and nobody else. Only you know what you're capable of. And you'll never find out if you don't try it.
You not only tried it, but you did it.
Yeah, I did.
Deirdre, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
I want to know, as I said earlier, I'm anxious to find out if you were, climbing all your little girl liked to climb, or did you just take it up later in life, or when did you get that spirit to do it?
Like you, Elaine, I loved to climb trees when I was a little kid, and lampposts and fences and all those things. I grew up in the city, New York City, but I wasn't allowed to. I was a girl. This was after World War II. I was a girl. I was supposed to wear dresses and stay home and take care of my mother, who was handicapped. Anyway, so I gave it up, and then 40 years later, something like that, 50 years later, I had Alex, and the rest is kind of history. And so there was this big chunk of my life I never did anything remotely like, athletic.
Always
Well,
hard.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Why don't you give us a little brief background of you? You'd mentioned New York. You grew up in New York. Tell us a little bit about your background and then what got you to the running and climbing.
Well, those are like 3 different stories. I'll try to condense that, but yeah, I grew up in the city. We were always very active back then. The kids spent their days out in the street playing together. We went climbing on trees and stuff, climbed lampposts and climbed fences when it was necessary. I rode my bike. We went ice skating and roller skating in the street. So active, yes, but never anything you would call athletic. And I grew up in a house filled with smoke. Both my parents smoked cigars, cigarettes. And they didn't know about secondhand smoke back then, and so they just made fun of us kids who didn't like it, you know. So my lungs are shot. I mean, anything more strenuous than getting up out of my chair, and I would huff and puff. So I always assumed all my life that I couldn't, that things like that were off limits to me. I could never swim. That requires, breathing, deep breathing. I could never run. And I accepted that. And then when I was 30 something, 32, I had Alex. And he was born a climber. That's all he ever wanted to do from the day he was born. Literally from the day he was born. He could stand up that day, the day he was born, which is unheard of. I mean, little newborns cannot stand, but he had powerful thighs and big, big, powerful hands, and he could. And then he started, he never was interested in anything except that. That was his
Tunnel vision.
yeah, exactly. That was his passion. I mean, he would do other things. He loved to read, and he was, a bright kid and very articulate. He's always been very articulate, but the only thing he really truly loved was climbing on stuff. And back then, climbing was not a sport. Back then, nobody heard of that. It wasn't a thing. There were no climbing gyms around like nowadays. So he was different, very, very different. And then he started making it a career. And he was always gone off on a climbing expedition somewhere, as he reached adulthood, kind of, he was always gone on, Siberia or Dubai or Oman or China. He was always gone on climbing expeditions. And I was too busy to follow his career. I was coping with a horrendous life. A lot of horrendous things were going on. A miserable marriage, a failed this, a failed that. I was working 2, 3 jobs at a time. I never had time to follow his career. I would get these magazines. I would get magazines that, it was his address too. He still lived at home. And I'd look at the cover, and there's my son on the cover doing something that I always assumed that I was interpreting it wrong, that I was reading it wrong, because, normal humans can't do this kind of thing. But yet there he was. And I reached a point where I wanted to understand what his life was. I mean, I had no clue what he did once he left the front door to go off on an expedition. I knew I may never see him again, because I understood, the risks involved. I knew I may never see him again each time he left. And I had to make my peace with that. But I wanted to understand what they did when they went up on these mountains, and how, even more importantly, how they kept themselves safe. I was mom. You can't turn that off. I wanted to know what they did out there to mitigate the risks. I understood the risk, like the public, from looking at the picture. You fall off, you die. But
Well, before you go too much further, let's introduce who your son is.
okay.
Yes, tell our audience who your son is, and that'll bring context to this.
My son is the most famous rock climber in the world, the most audacious rock climber in the world. He does things all over the world that no one else, even the elite climbers, even think is possible. Like climbing El Capitan in Yosemite with no ropes. No one has even ever dreamed about doing that, because one look up at this 3,000-foot wall, straight up vertical granite, you can see that that's impossible. But not to my son. You might have seen the movie about him called Free Solo. It won an Oscar, by the way. I got to go to the Oscars. Nothing I'd ever dreamed of. So it's not only extraordinary to us, the public, it's extraordinary to climbers as well. So that's my baby boy.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to live with that. I grew up, he grew up with that. And so I had to make my peace with the risks involved. But I wanted to understand his life. There was nothing really between us, because I didn't understand his life and he wasn't interested in mine. I was an academic and a writer and a musician, and he didn't care. It's not that he didn't care about those things, mildly interested because it was mom, but The only thing that really drove him was climbing. And I knew nothing about it because I never had time. I never had time to go with him to the gym.
Yeah.
His father always did that.
What
And
is so amazing that you made peace with yourself.
well,
You
I had
understood
to.
what he was doing, and you knew that maybe he may not come back from this
Oh,
climb.
But I
And
also,
not
but I also,
everybody can do that.
no,
Not
I,
everybody can do
right.
that. You're a
I,
very strong lady because
yeah,
some people would they would, and what the strength that you have, you gave to your son
yeah,
because he knew that you knew that
yeah,
he was coming back. You
yeah,
knew,
yeah,
and
exactly.
so that goes over to him. And
Yeah,
because if you were the other way, that that negativity would go to him too, and
right,
he may
right.
not come back.
I would have shut that down. Right,
Positiveness that
right.
you have probably is saving his life.
Exactly. It saved his life and saved our relationship because I could have just shut him down, or shut me down. No, no, don't do that. Don't do that. And that would have put up a wall between us, and I didn't want that.
Mm-mm.
And I knew what kind of person he was. I knew he's very, very careful and studious. And, I knew he prepared very, very well for whatever he did. And so I had to learn how to trust him. And the very first time that we went climbing, that was really driven home.
Now he's the one that talked you into this. He
No,
says,
no, no,
"Oh, okay."
no, no,
What
no,
does he say?
no. He never talked me into it. No, 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 no. It
He
was
didn't.
entirely my idea, and
Yeah.
I tried it, at the gym, just at the climbing gym, not outdoors yet. And I started to make some friends, and they helped me. But once my son learned that I was interested in it, he was very happy to take me outdoor climbing, and that was exciting.
I
And
And
see.
didn't he take you up to El Capitan like 3 weeks after he did his solo climb?
yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, three
So
months. Yeah, exactly.
3 months.
Yeah,
Okay,
3 months.
okay.
We went up.
And how did that come to be? What in your mind took you to that place to want to do that?
Well, that's a kind of a long story. I mean, at that point, I had only been climbing for 6 years. I started
Mhm.
when I was almost 60,
Yeah.
59 and 11, 12. Um, and so,
Life begins at 60, I tell
yeah,
everybody.
exactly, exactly. Right on. And so I was climbing outdoors with some friends, and we'd go up to the Sierra because I was living in Sacramento, and so the Sierra Nevada, the spine of California, is just an hour away. So we would go climbing outdoors, and um, my son also climbed in some of the same places. And so one day we went out to this place called Lover's Leap, sort of South Lake Tahoe area in the Sierra Nevada, and we did a multi-pitch climb. A multi-pitch means two climbers are on two ends of a rope. You're on the ground. One climber climbs up and attaches the rope to wherever they can find a purchase. So somewhere they put in gear and they attach the rope in case you fall. The rope is just in case you fall. That's all. It doesn't help you climb. It holds you if you fall.
Yeah.
And so he climbed. And so a multi-pitch climb, you go up, and then the second person joins that first person, the leader. The leader and the follower. Follower goes up and joins him. You change the ropes, you change the gear, then you go up again, and then you go up again. And multi-pitch can go on and on and on and on, depending on where you are. So we did a 3-pitch climb, and it was very hard for me. And but
Scary to me.
yes, yes, it is scary, and you have to learn to make your peace with that too. You have to learn.
Yeah.
One of the hardest parts of climbing is you have to learn to trust the gear because your life hangs on that rope. And you have to implicitly trust your leader, your lead climber, because your life is in their hands. You have
Mhm.
to trust how they place the gear. You have to trust how they secure the ropes and how they protect you as you come up, because they hold your life in their hands. So there's an awful lot of trust that goes into climbing and a lot of learning. There's a lot of physics that you have to know. The line of fall, how much force will be on the rope? If it goes over an edge, will it cut the rope? There are all kinds of physics things that you have to understand if you're going to climb, really climb.
When you were getting close to the top of El Capitan, you knew you were getting close.
Yeah.
Were you excited, or did you keep yourself calm, or how did you feel? I would be, oh my God, we're almost there. We're almost there. How did you feel?
I had expected to feel that way, but it was 13 hours of uninterrupted 100% physical effort by that point. And I was exhausted. I was hungry. Oh, I was so hungry. All the while that we were going up, I never had time. We couldn't stop. I mean, there's no place to stop. It's sheer vertical rock. And so I just snacked out of my pocket. What I had, like sports beans and sports runners stuff that you can stick in your pocket. And so I would just snack on that. And I broke off little pieces of my sandwich. It was in my back pocket. But my real food was in my backpack, and I didn't want to take that off. At each point where you switch the ropes and switch the gears, that's called an anchor point. At each anchor point, I would stop. Alex would go up again to the next pitch, and I would hang there and wait for him. And then he would say, I can clip onto the rope, and then I'd start. So, but waiting for him, it's hard to explain if you've never been up there, but if you drop something from 1,000 feet up, well, A, you're not going to get it back.
No.
and B, you could really hurt somebody with it. And if you drop something like a quarter from 1,000 feet up, it could kill somebody. It picks up such force. And so I didn't want to take my backpack off and fumble for my lunch and my food and I had water hanging on my harness, so I was okay for water. I had a little bit of snacky stuff, but by the time I got up there close to him, it was pitch dark by then. There was not a sliver of a moon, so it was truly pitch dark. I couldn't see anything. And I was starving, and I was exhausted. My arms were so tired from pushing those things up the ropes. So no, I didn't get excited. I didn't have the energy to get excited. I was glad it was almost over. And, I knew it wasn't over, though, because the climb is not over until you're back down on the ground. And
when you got to the top, did you go like
that?
No,
no, absolutely no. I could not. There was no time to do that. 13 hours up and 6 hours down. Alex wanted to do this in one day. So no, there was no time. I got up. I couldn't really see. Well, you had what do you call headlamps? So there was a cone of light, so I could see my son. And he told me what to do. He told me where to go, how to attach, and I did it, and I followed the instructions. And then we had to walk across the top. The top of El Capitan is about 1.5 miles wide. So, it's this huge monolith of rock. It's 1.5 miles. And our climb came up the west side, and then we had to walk across the whole top because the down climb is on the east side.
Is the down climb hard, or is it?
Yes. Oh, yes. For me, coming down, so you can't practice coming down unless you've gone up, and I had never gone up it fully. So I had done parts of the descent, but the descent involves a lot of scrambling, and you have to really know what you're doing. And it involves rappelling on ropes in several different places, 6 different fixed ropes. And we had only our headlamps. So, but fortunately, I was so tired, I didn't worry about it. I just did it. I was on autopilot by then.
Step by step by step.
Exactly. I was on autopilot by then, by the time we were coming down, but we didn't have time to stop and picnic or whatever. It's pitch dark and it was getting cold, and no, we just went until like 2 a.m. almost.
And you were 66 when you did that, right? And that made you at the time the oldest woman to make the climb.
Wow.
Exactly. And
you still are, yeah. And then roll the clock forward. Yeah,
right.
Roll the clock forward 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
When you turned 70, and you decided you wanted to do it again.
Well, see, when I did it with Alex, I didn't see the top because it was pitch dark, no moon.
We wanted to see the top.
I wanted to see the top. And I
Mhm.
wanted to see what it was like to sleep up there.
Okay.
Climbers do that. They sleep on a portaledge on the side of the rock, or they sleep on the top. And I had never done that either. And I wanted, before I got too old, I wanted to see what that was like. Because my son did that routinely. And he and his friends would, they'd all come over and they'd all talk about the climb they just did or the climb they were going to do. And it all sounded so routine like. And I knew it wasn't, so I wanted to see what it was like up
Did,
on the top and sleep up
yeah.
there.
Did it
So
take
the
you 13
overall,
hours to go up again, or
No, no, going up, for my 70th birthday, we went up the descent route, the way we
oh,
came down with my
oh, I
son.
see. Yeah.
And it's easier and faster. It took me 6.5 hours to go up that.
Yeah.
and then so the overall experience from 66, never having done it, not knowing really what to expect, to when you turned 70 and you had a little bit of experiential knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us kind of the parallels between the two and then the major differences.
Well, the difference is, of course, El Cap is sheer vertical rock.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the way we went up for my 70th is the descent route. It's called the East Ledges. So when I did it the first time, I heard all these people talking about coming down the East Ledges. To me, ledge, what does ledge mean? Ledge, you're right on the edge, But you're not actually. I didn't know that though, but because I had never done it. So I was very, very, let's say I had great trepidations about coming down, especially with somebody like my son who goes so fast. And he's very patient with me. He always is. But nonetheless, in the dark, with somebody going that fast, I worried. I was a little concerned. But as it turned out, I did just fine. But but going up going up the way we had come down with my son, is very different. The first 2 hours, you are clambering through woods and over boulders and over rocky stream beds, and it's hard, hard physical work. To my son and his friends, this is nothing. I mean,
Oh boy.
you're in their 30s, this is nothing. But when you're in your 60s or 70, it's not nothing.
Tell
It's
me, have you
not
ever
nothing.
heard of the Ledge Trail?
No,
And
I have not. I read that in your message. No, I've never heard that
I,
term.
I, when I was, Jack was, I had just, well, I've met Jack and we've been, knowing each other about a year, and he invited me to the Yosemite. So I went up to Yosemite, and he says, we're going to take a hike. We're going to do the Ledge Trail. They've closed it. They won't let you can't go up there anymore. It's like 1 mile straight up. And when you were talking about climbing over rocks and climbing of the, well, I got halfway up, and I was so tired. There was a little stream there. There's a little stream, and I plopped down on my face, and I went and just like a dog. It licked
Yep,
up
yep,
that water because I was so tired.
right.
And so I, having done that ledge trail straight up, and it's only like 1 mile up, but
Right.
or whatever, like I don't know what the mileage is, but I just admire you so much for what you've done, because I was just so tired. And then Jack put me on his back after I was licking up the water, and then and took me a little ways, and then I said, I could do it again. And so I finished my got to the top, and then we had to
Good.
hitchhike down because we had to 3 miles down the road. But anyway, so I admire you so much, and having just done that myself, I can relate. I can relate.
Yes.
And then 13 hours,
Yeah.
Greg, can you imagine that? 13 hours,
No,
and
I
then
can't.
6 hours back. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it it required serious training. And
Oh,
I knew this, I knew it was going to be hard. And I didn't climb, with my hands and fingers in the rock. My feet were on the rock, but I used mechanical ascenders on a rope. They allow you to clip onto the rope. There are teeth, so it can't go down, but you push it up. And then it's attached to your harness and it's attached to your feet. So when you push it up, you bend your knee and then you stand up on that. And then you push the other side up, you bend your knee, you stand up on that. So you're basically pushing your entire body weight up the rope for 13 hours. It was exhausting. My
Amazing.
shoulder areas,
Amazing.
my upper arms were absolutely screaming by the top. But I knew the first time I tried that, my son told me, yes, I can get you up El Cap, because I had been curious, after many years of hearing about it from him and his friends and seeing it myself. I asked him if he could get me up El Cap someday, just as a climber. It was, it's like the mecca of climbing, El Capitan. There's nothing like it anywhere in the
Oh,
world.
I know. My
And
God.
so I wanted to experience it. So he said, yeah, sure, I can do that, but you have to learn how to jug. And jugging is, using these mechanical ascenders. I had no idea how that worked. I'd never seen one. So I got some, and I arranged with the climbing gym so I could set up indoors and practice. But indoors is only like 35 feet high. So the first time I did it, the first time I got on the rope with these Jumars, these are called Jumars, these gizmos. And the first time I got on the rope in the gym was, it was terrifying because you swing, you spin, you spin around and you can't control that, especially outdoors. If you start to spin, you can't control it because there's nothing to push against. So that was scary, and it hurts like the dickens. The first time I did it, my fingers were bleeding, my hands were all raw. And I found out why they wear gloves when they do this. And so I got some. It was 35 feet. And I got to the top, and I'm thinking to myself, 35 feet, I have to be able to do that 100 times to get to the top of El Cap.
Oh, wow.
So so I set out a schedule, and I kept to it.
You said you set out a schedule from the moment you did that first 35-foot climb, knowing
Right.
that you had to times that by 10 or
100,
yeah,
100.
100. I'm sorry, 100. This is kind of a dual question here. What was the time frame, and did you, because we like to bring parallels in with Jack and
Right.
his legacy. He was always a big believer in visualization. Did you
Yeah.
see yourself through this process reaching the summit, and what was the actual time frame from when you decided to do it to when you did it?
Oh, yeah, good questions. For anybody, yeah. I've been a teacher all my life, mostly college, university, and so I knew that when I did this, I was still teaching college, community college. So I knew that in one semester, which for us was 18 weeks, I knew that in 18 weeks you can learn a little bit of anything. You can learn to become a firefighter. You can learn to speak French. You can learn a little math, whatever, in 18 weeks, at least a little. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted to get to the top any way I could, and see what it was like. So I set myself a schedule of 18 weeks. I figured, I did the math. I have to be able to do, 35 feet times 100. I mean, that's mind boggling I was a French teacher at that point. That's mind boggling. And so I figured I would need at least 3 days of training every week. And that is exactly what my French courses were like, and my Spanish courses were like, and my Italian courses were, 3 days a week, 18 weeks. And so I also had the advantage. My son knows everybody in climbing, and he practically lives in Yosemite, at that point anyway. And so he had a place for me to stay, a ranger's house. The ranger was going to be gone for a long time at some other park, and so I could stay there. I and a lot of other climbers could stay in his house. So I had a kitchen and a bed and all that. So if that were not the case, I don't know if it would have happened at all, because you have to be there. So I went to Yosemite 3 days a week, every week for 18 weeks. The first day, Elaine, I think I know which climb you mean when you call it the ledge climb. I think I know which climb you mean. It is no longer available to climbers.
No, it's they closed it. It was too dangerous.
Right. But I did something similar. They call it the 4 Mile Trail, which zigs and zags up the mountainside to Glacier Point, And so I did that for cardio, because there's an awful lot of cardio demand if you're pushing your whole entire body weight up these ropes for 13 hours, that's a lot of cardio. And so, and I don't have that because, like I said before, I grew up in a house filled with smoke. And we didn't really get into my running, but the running preceded this. And I learned that I can, in fact, do cardio, but I have to train for it a lot. And so the first day of my 3 days of each week, I did that. I trained for cardio. The other 2 days I got on, there are two sets of fixed ropes that always hang on El Capitan. The climbers use them to haul their gear up or to come down after a climb or partial climb. They use them for all kinds of things. So they're always hanging there. They're well maintained by other climbers and by the climbing ranger. A lot of people check those ropes to be sure they're safe. That was my first concern when I started doing this. Well, yeah, I'm going to be training on these ropes, going up the ropes. But what condition are these ropes in? So that was a big concern for me as mom. I wanted to live through this, and I wanted to, my son to come with me to live through this. So found out about the ropes. I learned everything I need to know. Learning. There's such a learning curve in an activity like this. It's not just
Never too late.
exactly.
Never too late
Exactly.
to learn.
Exactly.
I'm going to be 99 and I'm still learning.
Well, good for you. That's how we all want to be. Yeah. So yeah, so I did that for 18 weeks. And by like the 15th week, 12th week, I knew I could do it. I didn't have any doubts about that. The only doubts were timing, how slow I might get as I got tired, because that's a lot of work. So yeah, I knew I could do it. I knew I had a good schedule going on to prepare me to do it. And as a funny little sidelight, I was training in the summer because it was July to October kind of. And as I would go up these ropes go up to about 1,000 feet. There are like 6 fixed ropes in a series, and you just go up, you change to the next rope, you go up, you change to the next rope, you go up. So I would get up pretty high, about a third of the way up. And then when people are coming down, the climbers who have just climbed El Cap, now they're coming down, they're using the same ropes.
Oh.
So sometimes, often, I would have to wait for them. So I'd be hanging at one of these anchor points, the bolts, and they would holler down, is it okay to descend? And I'd say, yeah, come on down. So they would come down, they'd meet me at these anchor points. They'd see this old lady with no big climbing bag on my back, no haul bag hanging below me, alone. I had the most interesting conversations. And those climbers come from all over the world to do that. And so I got to use all of my languages. I speak like 8 languages. And so I got to chat in Japanese and in Polish and in Italian and in French. And they were all incredulous that I was up there
You're
doing
all impressed too, I'm sure.
yes, but absolutely, they could not believe that I was up there and doing this, which doesn't speak well as a species. I mean, why should you be surprised that an older woman is doing something physical? Really, you can relate to this. It kind of bothered me that they were so surprised and shocked that I would be up there. But I had a great time hanging out with all these foreigners and American climbers.
Well, I don't blame him for being surprised. I mean, it's so impressive,
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's certainly life begins at 60 and you started running in your mid 50s and climbing in your 60s and now in your 70s. What's next?
Oh, there are so many beautiful rocks all over the world that I want to climb, When I did El Cap, I was still dreaming about climbing in the Dolomites in northern Italy, between Italy and Austria and Italy and Switzerland. And the following year, I do a lot of speaking engagements all over the world, and I can do them in 4 different languages. So I was speaking in Italy and so I said, oh, I'm going to be speaking in Italy at a climbing conference. You think you could get me out there climbing? So I got to climb in the Dolomites. I got to climb in the Swiss Alps. And
Wow.
so So
Wow.
it's exciting. Yeah.
What's your next climb? Are you going to do some more climbing?
Well, I'm based in Vegas right now, Las
Yeah,
Vegas, and Las Vegas has some outstanding climbing. That's why my
yeah,
son lives here. It's ringed
yeah.
by huge mountains, and so I've been little by little getting acquainted with those. But there are still lots of things I want to climb. I want to do more in the Dolomites. I want to climb in Japan. I lived in Japan for 4 years, but I wasn't a climber back then, and
Mhm.
I've heard from my son and from other people that the climbing there is outrageously good. And so I would love to do that, spend like a month climbing in Japan and China.
On Jack's 65th birthday, he towed 65 boats, or 6,500 pounds of wood pulp, Louisiana Pacific wood pulp in the boats. And so now on your when you get to Japan, you you'll have your a mark there now.
I
Jack
hope, I hope so.
Lake Ashinoko was where Jack did this. Now I don't know what mountain you're going to climb in Japan, but
I don't either. I don't either yet.
And
because
also a really nice thing about this too is it turned into you have written a book and then of course the documentary. Tell us
Yeah.
which came first and how that
Um,
happened.
well, I've been a writer all my life. I've written many books, textbooks and novels and nonfiction, a lot of books. And so when I got down to male cap, it was such a life-changing event, activity, whatever you want to call it. It took me a long time to process what I had done, and the way I process life is by writing, writing about it. And so I started writing about it, and it just sort of became the book, you know. And I incorporated a lot of my previous writings into it because the the book is called The Sharp End of Life. Sharp
Yeah.
end mean in climbing, the sharp end is the leader's end of the rope. And the
Okay,
leader
I was going to ask that question because I didn't know what that meant. So I appreciate you telling. So okay.
So if you're climbing on the sharp end of the rope, you're climbing first, and you're putting in the protection, and you're putting in the anchor, and you take all the risks.
and
And
then
so,
in your books you must have you're such a interesting person, and that you've given them strength by through these books, some of your strength that you have to people who don't have that strength, and when they
I hope,
read your writings and you teach them, you are taking some of that strength that you have and giving it to them. This
I
is how
hope
I
so.
see
I
it.
hope so. And in the next 3 or 4 months, I have another book coming out.
Mhm.
And that is exactly what you're talking about. Because the way I was able to manage doing this, I realize this is kind of extraordinary for somebody 70. The way I was able to manage that is the same way I managed becoming an orchestra conductor, in my 40s. The same way I managed becoming a publisher in my 40s also. I've done many different things, and I've always used the same method. And using that method, anybody can do anything that they dream about.
Yeah,
And
well,
it's not hard, but you have to know how to set it up. Like me
yeah,
setting up my 18 weeks of training, you have to know how to set it up, and you have to know in what order to do things. And
yes, and
that's what my new book is about. It's called Success in 7 Steps. And all
yes,
those 7 steps are all that you need.
yes. I
And does the
This is
quote
going to
"to
be
want
this is what
something is to be able to do it" mean anything to you?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. If you want it
this is
badly
what
enough, you will learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the book that Greg and I wrote, Pride and Discipline.
Yeah.
It's a story about Jack's writings.
Hmm.
It's but and through the thread in there is mental. It's
Yes. Oh, yeah.
mental. And
99% mental. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Jack always said, everything starts between your ears,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
And so he was a great on mine, and that's
Exactly.
where I said I didn't fall in love with his body. I fell in love with his mind. You know,
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
were on the same.
Right. That's
Wavelength.
so true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Climbing is 99% mental.
Mhm.
People
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I'm not strong enough." You don't have to be strong enough. I wasn't either. I had these chicken skinny arms when I started climbing, and I couldn't do a pull up. I couldn't do a push up. You don't have to, but up here, you have to know how to strategize and get around the weakness and make it a strength for you. And that's
And
what this
don't like negativity. Get in there.
exactly, exactly. And this is where the media does us a grave disservice. People believe everything they hear or see in the
Oh,
media.
I know.
Oh God, that's a big part of my book, talking about that. But yeah, this coming book, I hope it goes out to a bazillion people because it will counteract that negativity that's out there now in the media.
Yes.
There's so much negativity out there, and there's so much dependency. Don't do this if you're 60. Don't eat this if you're 40. Don't if you're 50 and you want to exercise, go see your doctor first. That's
Yeah.
nonsense. Nonsense.
Yeah.
Remind us the name of your new book.
It's called Success in 7 Steps.
And so, and it will
Hey,
come
I
out
love
when?
that. Love
When
that
will it?
title.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly the next few
Okay.
months.
In the next few months. Okay. And okay. So the name of the original book, The Sharp End
Sharp
of
End of
Life.
Life. Mhm.
And then the subtitle I thought was interesting, A Mother's Story.
Right, right.
Um,
This is rare in climbing. This is very rare in climbing.
Now,
You
where can we find those books of
Well,
yours?
the one that's out already, The Sharp End, anywhere that you buy books, on Amazon or in your bookstore or anywhere you buy books, you can get that.
and then the documentary. Let's shift and talk a little bit about the documentary. How did that come to be? And
That's a long story too. After I finished my 70th birthday climb, of El Cap, that story, this was kind of a surprise to me because I knew I could do this. I've done it before. Then we went up, we went down, ho hum. But that story went around the world. It played on news media all around the world in every language you could think of. And so a lot of people out there saw it. And a filmmaker from Philadelphia contacted me and said, "I saw this. This is amazing. This, da, da, da. I'd like to make a movie about that." And I was skeptical. I mean, my son kind of gets that from me. We do these things and then we figure, well, it's no big deal. I mean, Alex before he became a household name, my son was known among the climate community as No Big Deal Honnold, because he would do these things and he'd say, well, that was no big deal. To the rest of the world of climbing, it was a major big deal, but it wasn't to him. And I think he got that from that gene, if you will, from me, and because I know now, I've written the book. I know that anybody can do anything if they approach it right. Here,
Exactly. Anything in life is possible, and
Exactly.
you can make it happen. And that's what Jack
Exactly.
always said. Yes.
Exactly right. Let's carry that tradition on. And this new book is exactly that. And so she contacted me again, and we started talking about it. And it turned out that she, the filmmaker, Melissa, quit. She was a powerhouse CFO at some, I can't remember which corporation in Philadelphia. And she was getting to be 64, 65 and thinking to herself, oh, what have I not done that I always wanted to do? And she had always dreamed about making a movie. And so she quit this powerhouse job at 65 and started making movies. And she only had 1 or 2 before she contacted me about my movie.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. And so it's worth looking up. Yeah.
Anything in life is possible.
Exactly. She's a poster child for that too. Yeah.
And it won some awards too, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been winning at what do you call it? Film festivals all across the country. It won in Philadelphia. It won in Sacramento. It won in I think Montana. And it won like 6 times. Best documentary.
And the name of it is Climbing into Life.
Yes. And you can see the trailer on YouTube. You can't see the movie yet because while a movie is in film festivals, the public can't see it.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right. Is there a time frame? Do you have any idea of when it
I
might?
have no idea.
Okay, but yeah, keep your eyes out for that.
Yeah.
Deirdre, tell us where people can find out more about you and your amazing story.
Well, you can look at the trailer online, and if you just put my name into YouTube or online anywhere, you get countless interviews and things like that. Um, let's see, I have a blog. My name is Dierdre Wolownick, so Dierdre W, just the W for my last name, deirdrew.us, United States, and you can read my blog there. I've been keeping a blog for a long time now, like 10 years, something like that. And a lot of that has fed the input for this new book. So there are all kinds of possibilities.